Demons. What are they? Where do they come from? We're going to get into it in this video. I've been watching Pastor Jack Hibbs lately. He's put out a couple videos on the origins of angels and demons and just kind of getting into all the details. It's real interesting. So the one we'll check out is specifically on demons. I also have a commentary by the one and only Dr. Michael Heiser. He got asked a real unique question that I never really thought about, and we're going to get his answer on that. We'll also break down part of a sermon from Pastor Alan Nolan. So let's check it out. It should be a good one.
Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, as I read earlier, listen to this. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, remember that daughters were born to them, that sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took them to be their wives of all they chose. And the Lord said to them, my spirit will not always strive with man forever, for indeed he is flesh, yet his days shall be 120. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore to them children. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So I read that portion to you twice for.
So all this is pre-flood. This is all leading up to the flood and Noah and the ark, right? One of the reasons that God put that judgment on humanity was not only that man was wicked and had evil on his mind continuously, like the Bible says, is that the fallen angels that fell to earth started mixing with the women and having these offspring, right? And they just started spreading and spreading. So that's one of the reasons for the flood also.
Context. Watch what we have here. Jesus said regarding the demons, remember the man that I mentioned earlier, the demoniac who was possessed in Gadara, the demons said out of that possessed man, Jesus, we know who you are. Have you come to torment us before the time? And Jesus said, what is your name? And out of the man's mouth came what is probably the sound of collective voices. Legion. The name is Legion, for we are many.
Just imagine that. Imagine the voice of hundreds upon hundreds of demons just talking out of that guy. It's wild.
And they make a strange request of Jesus. Whatever is inside of this man, this demon host, they said, will you send us into those pigs right there? Will you send us into those demons? I mean, into those pigs right there? And Jesus grants them their request. Why? Because the time had not yet come for their damnation. But Jesus delivers the man, but the demons go right into the pigs.
They'd rather go inside of the pig than to face Jesus.
Stop right here. Nowhere in the Bible do we see angels, holy or fallen, having the need to possess people, things, statues, idols, or animals. But we do see this of demons. Okay, listen. A demon is always looking for a place to live. It seems as though they need to be invited in, though. It appears that they need to be invited. Open door. Could be pornography, could be drugs, could be.
So what he's getting at is that, you know, the angels ain't just exactly what he said. The angels don't need to inhabit a body, right? But the spirits do. So those Nephilims, when the Nephilim died, their spirits didn't have nowhere to go. They're just roaming around. So that's what he's getting to. That's what he's saying is what a demon is. It's the Nephilim, right? It's pretty interesting.
They die. Where do they go? Where do their spirit? Where do they go when their body dies? If they're not fully angel and they're not fully human, spiritually speaking, their body dies. Their body was swept away in the flood. Where does their soul go? they're oddities, to say the least. And yet the Bible warns us they were in the world before because of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. They were in the world before the flood, from Genesis 6 forward. And then must have happened again after the flood, because it says there were Nephilim, fallen ones, that entered the world a second time after the flood. You see, Jack, that's insane.
I mean, that does explain it, right? The Bible says they were here before and after. So, but after would be in the spirit form. I've heard a lot of different opinions on this. I've heard people say that they're here in the physical, also that they survived. I don't know. I mean, the flood wiped out everything, right? So I don't know. It's a kind of a good explanation, though.
Call it what you want, but the Bible says they were there before the flood and after the flood. When they die, where do they go? Spiritually speaking, what is their spiritual destination? I believe, this is my personal take, because angels in the Bible were created by God, and some angels fell, they're still called fallen angels. People will like to try to describe demons as fallen angels, but it's not consistent. Demons seem to be weaker than fallen angels. Fallen angels seem to appear and disappear, like good angels can appear and disappear. The Bible tells us in the book of Hebrews, be careful how you treat strangers, because without knowing, you could be speaking to an angel and not know it. Wow. Demons seem to need a statue, an animal, or a human to possess, to make a home. And Jesus said, when a demon leaves a man, he goes out looking for another place to live and wanders through waterless places.
Looking for another vessel to take. So we're going to check out Dr. Michael Heiser. He got asked a similar question. So pretty much they asked him, these Nephilim, when they die, where do they go? Do they go to hell? They said underworld, but so they're asking him, let's get his answer on this.
What we're going to see is that what happens in Genesis 3 is the first of three rebellions, supernatural rebellions in the Old Testament. And this frames pretty much everything else, after Genesis 11. And really, again, the spiritual warfare, worldview, if you want to call it that. So one of those things is that when you look at them, you see that in Genesis 3, there's an original rebel. Again, this serpent figure, Genesis 3 uses the serpent terminology. And then we've got the sons of God, okay? And that really gets a little bit confusing, because you have the sons of God and the daughters of men. All of the traditions, I would say, including the biblical traditions, because of 2 Peter and Jude, have the original offending sons of God basically punished, sent to hell, sent to the abyss, okay?
Sons of God, which in this context, in the Old Testament, sons of God specifically is talking about the angels.
But the Nephilim come into this. Their offspring are not sent anywhere. Okay, they are, the offspring, the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Rephaim, all these terms. They are destroyed later, through, it takes a while, in biblical history. There's the conquest, there's the, Goliath with David and all that kind of stuff. So all the traditions you'll find, are unanimous that when one of these was killed or destroyed, their disembodied spirit is what the Gospels call a demon. So the demons, as we know them from the Gospel stories, are different than the sons of God who rebelled in Genesis 6. They're two different groups. One is imprisoned. The spirits in prison that Peter likes to refer to, those are the original offending sons of God in Genesis 6. They are not the demons. The demons are something else that are derivative from those other guys.
The offspring, the Nephilim, that's what he's getting at, is what the demons are.
And so it raises a logical question. Well, a lot of critical scholars want to say, well, this is just, kind of strange. Here we have this thinking in the Second Temple period where the demons are the disembodied, spirits of the dead giant clans and all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of weird. It's new. It leaks into the New Testament, and you don't find this in the Old Testament. Isn't that, awful, And so, we've got a contradiction here between the Old and the New Testament. That's actually kind of nonsensical, because if you're going to look at the Old Testament vocabulary for the giant clans, one of the umbrella terms is Rephaim, and you do find Rephaim in hell, as it were, in the abyss, in the Old Testament. This is one of the Old Testament touch points for this later Jewish theology and this later New Testament theology.
So the Jewish people, that this is what they believed also. They believed that the demons were the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. So this is something that they held, back then.
Observed things that when the demons book comes out, I go through all of that. In the Gospels, demons are referred to as unclean spirits. Now, there's actually been a dissertation on where does the term unclean spirits come from and what does it mean? Why would demons be called unclean spirits? Well, unclean spirits are called unclean because, let's ask ourselves this question. What's one of the major categories of uncleanness in Levitical thought? Forbidden mixtures. Forbidden mixtures. And that's what you've got here. They're also called bastard spirits in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Why the bastard spirits?
Forbidden mixtures, similar to in the Levitical laws when God says to not mix wool with linen, or when you're planting your crops, your vineyard, whatever, don't mix different types of seeds together. Also, another one is don't mix animals, right? Don't breed different types of animals together. So that's what he's saying. It's a forbidden mixture, which is the same as the angels and the human women, right? Having that pretty much an unholy union, calling that a forbidden mixture. So we're going to check out Pastor Alan Nolan. He touches on this also.
You find unclean spirit, evil spirit, devils, seducing spirit, foul spirit, familiar spirit, and all of these terms are referring to what we would call demons. But what are demons? Does anyone know? Well, there are three theories as to what demons are. The first theory is that demons are fallen angels. The second theory is that demons are the disembodied spirits of a pre-Adamic race. If you remember, there are those who believe that the creation story in Genesis chapter 1 is actually a recreation story. They believe in what is known as the gap theory. Now, I don't have time to go into that, but if you are interested in that, you can go online and you can look at my series on Genesis. I think it's the third sermon in the book of Genesis. And I go,
which, by the way, if y'all don't know Pastor Alan Nolan, he did a real good series on Genesis, like he's saying, and also one on Revelation. There are different sermons that he would do on Sundays. I think they're about 70, 80 episodes, so over a year's worth of sermons, but they're really good. You can find his page. I'll link it at the bottom, but definitely worth watching.
The gap theory, all right? The third theory is that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that were killed during the flood. Now, which one of these three theories is right? Well, the first theory is certainly the most popular. If you were to take a survey, most people would say that demons are fallen angels. In fact, let's do that. How many of you believe that demons are fallen angels?
He's going to ask everybody. See, I grew up also believing that demons were fallen angels. I mean, that's just something that I don't know. I've never really heard a pastor growing up in the church, different churches that I've been to. I never really heard pastors really dig into the topic. And I mean, I think they should. I think it is something important. It's part of, it's part of our biblical history, right? And it's something that we deal with every day, right? So, But I grew up believing that demons were fallen angels, and it wasn't until I started digging into it for myself that I really started getting more of an understanding to it. But let's check out more what he has to say.
Point is this. According to Jesus, demons are disembodied spirits, which means that demons are not and cannot be fallen angels. Why? In other words, how do I know that? Well, I know that because angels are not disembodied spirits. Angels have a celestial body, but they can also manifest themselves at times in a terrestrial body. Let's just use a good angel. How many of you remember when Gabriel came to announce the birth of Jesus to Mary? She's going to be the chosen vessel. He comes. He's an angel. He has a celestial body. But he transmogrifies and has a physical body, and she can physically see him. Yeah. How many of you remember the two angels? They came to Abraham. Of course, the Lord came to Abraham and said, I'm going to wipe out Sodom.
So same thing that Jack Hibbs was talking about. Angels don't need to inhabit a body, right? They came in whatever form they were able to morph or just have a body form is what he's saying. He's pretty much repeating what Pastor Jack Hibbs was saying.
Oh, but Lot's there, so he starts pleading for them. Well, if you remember, to go check it out, two angels go. The wicked men of Sodom, they want to have sex with them. They recognize those angels and think they're men. The Bible says many of you have entertained angels unaware. Why? Because they have celestial bodies, but they can manifest themselves in a terrestrial body, an earthly body. Does that make sense? All right. Now, some of you got confused last week when I said...
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. Some good information in there.
Oh, if demons are disembodied spirits, they can't be fallen angels because angels have bodies. The second theory, that demons are the disembodied spirits of the pre-Adamic race, is pure speculation. We really don't have any scriptures to support it. If you own Dake's Bible, he'll give some scriptures that give you little hints at certain things. This could be a possibility. You know, the earth was void and without form. The prophets say God doesn't create anything with its that's void and without form. You start looking at when Lucifer fell, he made the nations fall or tremble, and you say, wait, that means that there had to have been a race before. Not necessarily.
Yeah, that theory, you kind of got to get into a lot of assuming. I feel like, I know there's a lot the Bible don't give us, but you know, there is a lot that the Bible gives us. So the whole gap theory and pre-Adamic race and all that. I mean, I've heard different explanations on this, but you gotta have a lot of assumptions before you get there. That's the only problem.
Understand, sometimes you can say this happened, and the result of that, the butterfly effect, is way down here. Yeah. But we tend to do that sometimes. But I want you to understand there's no supporting evidence to believe that demons are the disembodied spirits of the pre-Adamic race. None. It's just a theory. The third theory, that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, who were destroyed in the flood, not only has scriptural support, but it was also the accepted view among the Jews at the time of Jesus. Yeah. You see, the Jews believed that when the Nephilim were killed in the flood, their half angel, half human soul or spirit lived on, just like ours does. And that's what demons are. They're disembodied spirits.
Yeah, because where would their soul or spirit go? Where would it go, right? They weren't created for a purpose, right? God created angels, and God created humanity, and the Nephilim was created out of, you know, not divinely created. In other words, they weren't created for a purpose. So, you know, what do you do with that? Yeah, we'll stop right there. I know this video went kind of long, but I really appreciate y'all watching. But get down in the comments, let me know what y'all think. Do y'all think that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, or do y'all think they're fallen angels, like probably a lot of us grew up thinking, right? But yeah, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. Pray for me. I'll be praying for y'all. I love y'all. I'm out.